Okay, thanks. How much time do we have?
2 minutes.
Thank you.
One and a half minutes remaining. One minute remaining. Seconds remaining.
Thank you. All right. Let's talk a little bit about topicality. I didn't touch on this in my previous speech, but I feel that it's becoming an issue of growing concern. We read a definition of what the federal court system is, and it's essentially 3-tiered. It starts at the district courts. It's the courts that you and I would go to if we had a problem. It's the first level of court. Those district courts, if you don't like your decision, you appeal it to a circuit court. Those circuit courts are the next tier on the cake. And then finally, you have the Supreme Court, which is the very top of the cake, and it is the most authoritative court that you would appeal to, even from an appellate court. Now, the federal court system is contained solely within that block. That is a system of courts that goes from one to the other, and things trickle down, and you work your way up. That is the federal court system. Now, we also have adjudication bodies, bodies of review, immigration review. We have bodies like that function, and people frequently refer to them as a court, even though they are not in any way judicial, and they do not follow the rules of criminal procedure. They do not appeal to the courts in the same manner that you would if you were coming from a district court. They are not part of that same tier of courts. So when we ask ourselves whether or not the EOIR or any adjudication bodies within the EOIR, which what we refer to as the immigration court is just staff of the EOIR, the Executive Board of Immigration Review, is not part of the court system. It's not even within those 3 tiers. Now, another test you can ask yourself, is it really actually a court? Is you look, every court except the Supreme Court, because it's the end of the line, has to be able to appeal in the United States to a superior court. The Board of Immigration Review, the EOIR doesn't appeal to a court. It appeals to another board within the EOIR. Now, from that board, you can then theoretically, you can appeal to the appellate court, which is in the federal court system. But that's essentially saying this matter has gotten big enough and out of hand enough that we're going to actually inject it into the court system. But this is by no means a court. It does not appeal to a court, and it's not within the 3-tiered system of our court. That being said, let's talk about the violation of public policy. Now, they essentially said, we read a quote from Hans von Spakovsky, who essentially said that it is against federal law to allow the federal government to spend any money on legal representation for people that are not citizens of the United States. Now, their response to this was to say, yes, but if you change something, it retroactively modifies the law. They have not demonstrated that to be true. We do not know that to be the case. Secondly, I will point out that in this quote, Hans von Spakovsky, a legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, points out that according to federal law, an illegal alien shall receive the privilege of being represented, meaning he can do it if he wishes, at no expense to the government by counsel of an alien's choosing who is authorized to practice in such proceedings. Hans von Spakovsky says Justice AmeriCorps, this is the organization that's providing the lawyers currently available, violates this stipulation at no expense to the government because the Justice Department is in violation of this record. Now, if it's true that if we pass a policy that says we're going to allow ourselves to fund these lawyers, it's going to retroactively repeal the law. Why was it when AmeriCorps changed their policy, which is a U.S. organization, to provide attorneys, why didn't it retroactively change the law? Because that's not how the system works. It doesn't mean that, if that was the case, we could just choose to do whatever we wanted, because that would repeal any laws that the government had preventing them from doing it in the first place. It doesn't make sense. It's a violation. The previous time we added lawyers, which we've already, as we admitted, we've got 2,000, enough lawyers to do 2,000 children a year. That didn't repeal the law. It's still there. It's still a problem. The affirmative team cannot simply wish that away because they have broadly worded mandates. Now, let's talk about our policy priorities. I talked about this earlier. I want to talk about it again. Essentially, I have two problems with this. First of all, we're allocating our resources to people who we should not be prioritizing. And essentially what I'm saying by that is we have people in the United States that are being delayed years and years to get their constitutionally guaranteed services adjudicated. Now, I said you didn't bring up evidence to prove that. I don't have time to bring up evidence to prove everything I say. That's just, either you believe me or you don't. You know, I mean, it's quite honestly my word against the fact that I don't have any evidence to specifically prove that point. Here's the deal. If we're going to pull together resources to help a system that is understaffed, that does not have the capacity in certain areas of the system, we need to give that extra capacity to people who have a constitutionally guaranteed right to adjudication services as a citizen of the United States. It is not a good road to head down. It is bad public policy to start favoring and increasing capacity in the system to people who do not have a right to these services when we have people who are being temporarily or indefinitely denied these services in the homeland. And the second reason I believe this is a bad policy for the United States is it encourages legal immigration. Essentially what you do is you say, look, I'm going to illegally enter the United States. It's a big, bad, scary proposition to go against the United States federal government if you're not in that country. But if you're guaranteed legal representation, it makes it all that more easy to do something that you know you shouldn't enter the country illegally. It's for all these reasons that I strongly and respectfully urge for negative ballot. Thank you.
How much prep time do we have remaining?
2 minutes, 38 seconds.
Alright, I'll take that in 30 seconds.
Minutes remaining. One and a half minutes remaining. One minute remaining. Seconds remaining. Ten seconds remaining.
set? Let's get started. In this final speech of the round, what I'm going to be doing is going over 4 points. First, we're going to analyze the arguments presented in the last negative speech. Then second of all, we're going to examine the efficiency of our plan. Second of all, the accuracy of our plan. And then finally, we're going to examine justice. So let's move into the first point. What is the arguments? What is the main argumentation that this round has come down to? Well, the first and the issue that the negative team spent the most time on was topicality. Now, the negative team's response was basically that the federal court system is layers of, or basically the layers of a cake. You have the appellate courts, and then we appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. So where do the immigration courts come in? Well, you can think of immigration courts as icing on the cake. Because what the immigration courts do is they appeal to the BIA, and then they appeal into the federal court system. They are part of the federal court system. Now let's move into a few specific responses based on evidence and facts. My first response is that we have a definition too. We have a definition too. It was completely ignored by the negative team, which is my next response. There is no reason to prefer. There is no reason to prefer. They simply said, okay, we have this definition. Okay, why is ours not legitimate? It is a legitimate definition by a credible source that says the immigration courts are part of the court system. And then my third response is that their own evidence mentioned immigration courts. Their own evidence mentioned immigration courts. The negative team's own evidence specifically multiple times mentioned immigration courts within the evidence. Immigration courts are clearly courts. Now let's move into the next point on topicality, which is that the immigration courts don't follow rules of civil procedure. Now, I have no idea if the immigration courts follow the civil rules of procedure or not, but the negative team never presented you any evidence that the immigration courts did not follow the civil rules of procedure. I'm not sure if they do or not, but that is not, it does not really matter in this debate round. It has absolutely no impact whether or not they follow the federal rules of civil procedure. Now, the next response was that the BIA, Board of Immigration Appeals, and the Executive Office of Immigration Review are not part of the federal court system. Now, we never talked about the Board of Immigration Appeals or the Executive Office of Immigration Review in our plan. Not once did we mention these. These are burdens that the negative team has placed upon us throughout this round to prove that these are part of the court system. We don't have to. We only have to prove that the immigration courts are part of the court system, and we have done so. And then the next argument was about how the law denies our plan. The law denies our plan. Now, his response was basically that Justice AmeriCorps, when they implemented this policy, didn't change the law. I have two specific responses. First of all, that was executive action. It was executive action. And then second of all, Justice AmeriCorps cannot change the law. The affirmative team can. The affirmative team can. And then they said, well, it doesn't override the previous law. Well, we don't have any specific evidence on it, but think about it this way. When we change the law, specifically the Constitution, when we amend the Constitution, we don't, in the constitutional amendment, you do not specifically mention the law you are reforming, but it overrides the previous laws. It is simple legal doctrine here. It is not that hard to understand. And then there are 2 points to reject our policy. First of all, bad allocation. I have a few responses to this. His first was that, or his first point under this was basically that cases are delayed for years. Again, he said it's his word without evidence, so okay, let's accept even if it is backlogged for years. Would counsel in those cases help? The answer is no. The courts are backlogged for different reasons. Counsel is needed in immigration courts specifically. The civil courts are backlogged for different reasons, not counsel. Counsel is needed in the immigration courts, not the civil courts. And then my second response is that we save money. We save money. Under the affirmative policy, a study showed that we save money under our plan. And then third, when a citizen is facing the government, they have a lawyer. When a citizen is facing the government, they have a lawyer in every single case. And then the final thing we need to touch on before we go into the 3 points to support our plan is the encouragement of illegal immigration. My first response is that he completely ignored our statistics. He completely ignored our statistics. My partner read multiple statistics in his first affirmative rebuttal that said children are coming because of violence. They are pushed, not pulled, to the United States. Government policies have absolutely no impact on the flow of children. It's violence. These children are coming because of violence. We need to effectively implement and handle their cases once they get here. And then the first reason to support our plan is that of efficiency. Efficiency. Under the affirmative policy, you will have 87,000 fewer court cases and 115,000 fewer hours of court staff time. This is a study that was not responded to by the negative team. It still stands And then second of all, we need to look at accuracy. The negative team agrees that it's easier to make a correct decision when you have all the facts. And then finally, justice. By having efficiency and accuracy, you move towards justice and create a better court system. Thank you.